on 2GB Sydney, 4BC Brisbane and network stations across Australia. It's time for Nights with John Stanley.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Here we are. It is a Monday night just after 8 o'clock right across the country. Of course, in this hour, whatever you'd like to say, 131873 is the number. We take your calls on any subject at all. There's plenty around. And I should mention, beginning of the program, I was meant to be on holidays this week and last week. We're on air because of the uptick in the situation with the pandemic, the fact that half the country's been in lockdown. We don't know what's going on by the end of this week. And then I certainly wish I was on holidays because I've had to go through today the shame and the embarrassment. The football club I follow, I've got thousands of dollars worth of gear that I buy. I buy premium season tickets every year. So in a very direct sense, I fund these players. Like so many other people. There are people whose lives revolve around this. I carry around the golf course a bag with the logo on it. And yesterday, I'm just checking the news. I couldn't believe it. How embarrassing. What sort of morons are these people? And there would be very, very few people in our community who would be more aware of what they can and can't do than footballers who've been in biosecurity bubbles so that they can continue to play and earn very substantial incomes. They've been hit with suspensions and fines this evening. I want to go through that in a moment. I'll bring Rita Panahi in because you're watching this from a distance, Rita. It's pretty extraordinary, this having a house party when you knew you couldn't have one.
Yes, we've been down this road. As you know, Victoria's been the lockdown capital, so we've had lengthy ones and all these sorts of issues coming up. And I think, of course, you don't want to see that, but I also think we should refrain from demonising or blaming people who've made mistakes.
Well, let me just make a point, though. This is I'll read from the Dragon statement, and I want to get your commentary on this guy. I just want to go, and because some of this is almost comical, but the club itself has described the players' arrogance and ignorance to both their biosecurity protocols and the health order. Every member of the club's Apollo register were communicated their responsibilities and limitations on numerous occasions, so they knew exactly what they were doing, and it would seem they simply decided to ignore it. And I want to just bring James Willis in he's our sports reporter, and he's been across this over the last couple of days because this house party, when the police arrived, James, you've got information that's broken in the last hour, and people can't believe this. Number one, when they arrived there, there were players hiding under beds and in cupboards. Is this correct?
Hello to you, John and Rita. Good evening to your listeners as well. Look, this is staggering. It's a largely unprecedented player punishment. The players have all been fined a total of $305,000, and little bits of information have dripped out of this as the days have gone on. What started was basically a week before this party, the NRL went into stage 4, which meant that players were only allowed to leave their homes for training and playing because the COVID cases were getting a little bit out of control and the whole of New South Wales was into a public health lockdown. So the players were specifically told that they were not to gather and not to leave the homes unless they were training or playing. Now, a week later, Paul Vaughan organises a house party in Shell Harbour where he invites along 12 of his teammates in the afternoon of Saturday, the day after they beat the Warriors. And basically, at some point in the afternoon, the Dragons club received word that this party was happening and told the players to get out of there and basically said, guys, you're breaching the bubble.
Get out.
Get out of there. Don't get an Uber. Go home as quickly as possible and we'll try and get rid of some of this. Now, my understanding is that the players largely ignored the directive of their club and didn't flee until the police arrived a number of hours later.
Well, they didn't all flee, though, did they?
Well, here's the thing. Now, the NRL has been told that Jack de Belin, who, as we know, was recently found not guilty of one indecent assault charge and had two other juries unable to reach a verdict, where he was facing a long time, a jail term, and has now been allowed to play after 2 years of suspension, was hiding under the bed at Paul Vaughan's house when police arrived And then the next day when the NRL started to investigate and they found out more and more players were at the house, some of them that had jumped the back fence, some of them that were hiding when the police got
in cupboards. This is a suggestion. They were in cupboards.
Yes, and people said, okay, well, hang on, was Jack DeBellin there? And the players said, no, Jack wasn't there. Jack told the club that he was walking his dog in a nearby street but didn't attend the party, and it has since emerged that he was at the party the entire time and had been hiding under the bed when the officers arrived.
Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. So you've now got a situation where they've got all these suspensions. The club, I know the club has said they're having a board meeting tomorrow, so they're saying they won't rule out further sanctions. Yeah,
and look, Paul Vaughan is in the most trouble. He's been given an 8-match suspension and a $50,000 fine, which is the most the NRL is allowed to fine the players as part of their collective bargaining agreement. Why Paul Vaughan is the biggest offender? He organised the party. He misled the NRL Integrity Unit during their investigations, but also this was his second offence after an earlier COVID breach last year. So look, Paul Vaughan's future at the Dragons and in the NRL is under a massive cloud. He won't play again unless the Dragons make the finals. You've got Corey Norman, who's had 4 or 5 indiscretions over the last few years, fled the party. His wallet was discovered by police. He was in such a hurry to get out of there. He's been fined $50,000. You've got Jack Bird, $25,000. Zach Lomax, another young star, $31,000. DeBellin, $42,000. Maguire, $12,000. It goes on and on.
And they've all the others suspended for 1 week, and they can stagger that over 3 or 4 weeks, so they don't have to. They can actually field teams. I think we'll hear more about this tomorrow. I suspect, and I think Ryan Webb's appearing on Breakfast Radio with Ben Fordham in Sydney tomorrow morning. He's the CEO of the club. You might find out a bit more about where the club's going, because it sounds to me like they're going to take further action. And there's obviously an issue there because I think they're a law unto themselves. James, thank you for that. We'll hear more of you tomorrow morning, getting lots of text messages. Rita, I know you talk about people not being, demonised.
I'm just, never mind demonised. I mean, you lot have completely lost your minds up there, really. I mean, you're surpassing Victorians for hysteria and just completely over the top. A $50,000 fine and what was it, 8 weeks suspension? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but you're
for
talking
having a party with teammates who you're with every day, who you're tackling, who are showering
but your
with.
Rule, and this is what I don't understand. Why, if someone said, let's get together, we're going to go to Vaughani's house, someone wouldn't have said, well, let's go to our meeting room at Wynn Stadium and watch the NRL. We're allowed to do that.
Well, exactly. I mean, I'm asking you to, for 1 second, forget about the rules. We know what the rules are, and think about the common sense or the logic or the rationality behind the rules. If these blokes are playing together, sweating together, tackling each other.
I understand that.
Then why can't they have a beer together? I mean, I'm not saying.
Well, hang on. We've had situations where you've had the Warriors have been away from their families. They're living in a bubble. The Melbourne Storm been living up on the Sunshine Coast. Whether you think the rules are wrong or inconsistent, there are rules. And you just and you've completely ignored your own club that's rung you
These
and
are
said,
healthy young men. How much do you think they've got to fear from COVID? Well, I just think if this was happening 12 months ago, I'd be right there with you with a pitchfork and demanding that.
We're not talking about pitchforks. We're not talking about pitchforks.
You kind of are because they've already been fined and suspended, and people are still wanting to kick them. I just think it's completely over the top. If it was happening 12 months ago, but given everything we know, I just think this is completely over the top.
Well,
I mean, you're basically talking about blokes whose careers are over because of this.
If anyone agrees with you, get on the phone, give us a call, let us know, because I'm finding it very hard to agree with you, and I'm more associated with them. I
think most people will agree with you. I'm not doubting that, but I'm here to tell you what I think, not just take a populist stance every time.
All right, 131873 is the number. Now, what about vaccines and the rollout of vaccines? Just on this,
are these blokes vaccinated? I'm interested in that. Is that a program the NRL have run? Given that they do have an exemption that they can go to training and play. is it part of their regime to be fully vaccinated?
We should find it. Can we just check with James whether those players are vaccinated? Because I don't think I've heard of players being vaccinated. I don't think they are, but because I know we were vaccinating our Olympic athletes, I don't think the NRL players are, because I think if they had been, we'd have seen something about it that had been done with a flurry. So unless I'm completely wrong, I'd say that they're not vaccinated. But can I just in relation to this, because the mask rules now in Queensland, you have to wear a mask outside. In Victoria, when you were in your lockdown and you're allowed to go out for exercise for 5 hours, I think within 5Ks, you were having to wear masks, I think, even when you were doing exercise. Is that correct?
We've had outdoor mask mandates several times.
Yeah.
Just in the last month, when the latest lockdown happened, outdoor mask mandates were. Yeah. But they've gone now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, look, when you go indoors, you've got to put a mask on here in New South Wales. In Queensland, when you're outside, you have to have a mask on unless you're exercising with one other person or you're with a member of your own household or family. How you determine that's another question. But I just want to hear what Chris O'Keefe, Nine's senior reporter, he was talking about this earlier today, and he asked the question about COVID cases and people contracting it when they're outside. Now, this is what he had to say.
Well, I was curious. I was watching all those pictures of everyone packed on the beach at Bondi and in parks and enjoying the winter sunshine, and I thought to myself, after covering this pandemic from day one, I was wondering whether I'd ever covered a story about someone who'd caught COVID-19 while outside. So I asked New South Wales Health, hey, has anyone ever caught COVID-19 outdoors? And they said they have not got a single recorded case of coronavirus transmission in New South Wales outdoors throughout the entire pandemic.
Yeah, there you go. So that's from Chris O'Keefe.
Similar in Victoria. This is why these outdoor mask mandates and why, you say these are the rules, you might not agree with them, but you have to follow them. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to wear a mask when I'm outdoors, walking socially distanced from everybody, walking on a beach or across a park, and inhibit my breathing because some moron has decided we're going to have an outdoor mask made, despite the fact that there is around the world very little, if any, evidence that masks outdoors have any benefit. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that says they have a adverse effect. So this is why someone who is normally very law-abiding, very pro-law enforcement and is questioning these things, because we are living in extraordinary times. This isn't to be forcing people to mask, to be having men dive into cupboards and hide for the crime of getting together with their mates and copping $50,000 fines and career-ending suspensions. I mean, come on.
Okay, 131873 is the number. A lot of text messages, lots of calls coming in. I just want to play also Gladys Berejiklian talking today about the future of lockdown. She said, she's actually put her hand up and said, well, listen, let's see where we're going with this, because last Friday we had this 4-stage plan announced by Scott Morrison, but we still don't know what level of vaccination allows the community to start opening up. Meanwhile, in the UK, we're going to be watching Wimbledon tonight. 2 Australians, I said Wimbledon in case anyone rings. I think I accidentally put the T in. Wimbledon. I don't say that other one. I may have done that accidentally there. But we've got they're going to have crowds there, and they're having significant numbers of cases, but the cases are among either the unvaccinated, and the cases have been, because of the Delta variant, you don't get as sick. Let's just have a listen to what Gladys Berejiklian had to say.
I know everybody is keen to know what's going to happen beyond Friday's lockdown, as am I. But what I can tell you with certainty is that the next couple of days will be absolutely critical in allowing our health experts to collate the data that we've had in the last week and then to present their advice to government. I can say that the lockdown certainly has been effective in not doubling and tripling the figures that we were worried about. It's given our contact tracers the ability to maintain control over the virus. But what it has foreshadowed is that, unfortunately, when a small number of people do the wrong thing, it does result in extra cases. And I want to thank the vast majority of our citizens who've done absolutely the right thing. But unfortunately, having a party when you're not supposed to have a party is not doing the right thing.
Yeah, and look, she's referring to a party at the Meriton Suites in the city. where there have been at least 3 cases now where people have contracted COVID in the entire building. They're saying all those people that were in that building at the weekend now have to isolate to try and restrain that, because it wasn't. I think you might have found there'd be lots of parties held over the weekend, but these were high-profile footballers. Can I quickly, Rita, because you're getting a bit of support here, you'd be surprised to hear.
Oh,
No, not necessarily.
I am surprised.
Well,
thank you, New South Wales. You're not as scared witless as the rest of the country
well,
then. Good.
Not all of them. Here we go. Okay. Gee, lots of them here.
If it's a nasty one, read it out so I can respond.
No, I'll give you all of them here, and I've got to go all the way down because there's lots and lots of pages here. People disgusted with Jack de Belin. Someone sorry for me because me and other fans. Another one, Sue, as a Dragon supporter all my life, upset with these morons. They're selfish. Then we get It's a Joke from Harris, which I assume is supporting you. Simon, the footballers are overpaid prima donnas. Susan says you don't understand and you're being stupid. I'll go through these. How can you cop this rubbish? From Rita. So there you go. Yes, she's wrong. That's another one, just a simple one. Rules are rules, Rita.
I retract my earlier praise.
Oh, wait a moment. Wait a moment.
I
haven't finished yet.
As the rest of the country.
Hang on.
You're
Haven't finished yet, Rita.
Good on you.
Rules are rules. You break them, you pay the price. Maybe you should get hold
Thanks,
of, apparently Mark Riddell lives across the road from the party. He's part of our continuous call team. Daniel from Glenbrook says, I agree with Rita. A bit of arrogance within the players. So this is someone saying it's about the arrogance of the players, thinking they're above themselves. That's from Leo. I'm with Rita here. They had a barbecue. A barbecue with people they sweat on and tackle every day. No one else was there. Let me just find this because there's so many text messages coming in on this one. Heaps of them coming through.
None of them should pay this.
This has been blown out of proportion. Rita should have gone... I'm giving you all the emails, Rita. Rita should have joined the players at the party. She's got as much brains as those players. Sorry. Hang on. What do you expect when you're paying buffets so much money? Where can I buy
these comments seem to be jealous.
No.
They're upset these players are earning a lot of money and are a bit arrogant.
Wait a moment.
What about the actual
Hang
offence?
on. Stuart says, where can I buy a pitchfork? Another one says, I agree with Rita. That's from France. If someone else had this party, it'd still be wrong. They think you're wrong. Another one here, Teresa. I absolutely agree with Rita. It's crazy how we get treated by the government. Gary says you're defending the indefensible. Who could put a possibly spin on this story? That's from Susan. I agree with Rita.
Putting a positive story. I'm just saying, put your pitchforks away, you horrid, horrid people, and have some sense of proportion. These people haven't gone out and robbed anybody. They haven't bashed anybody. They haven't inflicted violence or murdered anybody. They got together with their teammates and breached COVID rules, okay? No one was put in jeopardy. That, of course, they saw themselves above the rules. They got together. Yep. You may want to get together with your mates, but these are people that they work with, that they see daily, and it's the $50,000 fine. You want to tell me that's proportional?
Well, apparently the $50,000 fine is the most they can be fined under the collective bargaining agreement. They can't fine them any more than that. So the implication is they would have fined them more if they could have. I'm simply passing that information on. Joe from Menai agrees with you, Rita. The law is an ass. He's repeated much of what you've said there. Then I've got here, Rita has a point. The fine is excessive, but idiots nevertheless. What about that? All right. So
you went through a few, but I feel there is this sense, and we've been through it particularly down in Melbourne, and I was in New South Wales just in the last few days in an orange zone, as we call them, in Victoria. And there's this misdirection where you want to direct your anger, your rage, your frustration somewhere, and when someone puts up their hand and they've done something wrong, they've been caught out, the venom coming their way is completely over the top, given what their offence is. And I think this is part of the reaction to this lot. And, of course, you know, the fact that they're footballers and they're well paid and privileged just adds to that sentiment even more. But I think if you're a fair-minded person, you look at actually what they've done, what risk they've exposed the community to supposedly, and what punishment they've copped. I think no fair-minded person would say that's a fair dinkum.
Well, there's a lot of people here. I've got Steve. Steve's on the line.
That's what
Hello,
I'm saying.
Steve.
I'm saying you're all being emotionally affected by the plight you're in. You're in lockdown for the first time in like a year.
Yep. Steve's on the line. Hello, Steve.
Oh, g'day, John. G'day, Rita. Look, I'm a Tigers supporter, and John, I'm not going to put the boot into anyone at St George. We can't defend. That's true. Jack de Belin was found in a bedroom. Now,
hiding under
he
a
has
bed.
gone through...
Yeah, I mean, look, the club's backed him over the last 3 years. They've supported him. They've paid him through the whole thing. I'm surprised. Why would you have gone? Why would you even turn up at a function like that? I mean,
the thing is for me, John, is contracts have to go, because I can't say to my teenage girls, and sorry, Rita, but I can't say to them that they can go and have 10 of their girlfriends at a certain person's house at the moment. Okay, so maybe it's inflammatory, maybe it's escalation, maybe it's all of those things, but common law is common law. If we can't do it, we can't do it.
And look, Steve makes a point here. See, school goes back, so it might be that if you wanted to have 10 of your schoolmates over for a sleepover, you can't do it because and you're in the classroom with them all the time, but you can't do it because that's just the way the rule is. So, and yet footballers who are in this biosecurity bubble so the competition can continue, they do what they do.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say there's plenty of things I'll be losing sleep over, bad things happening around the world and even in this country. Bunch of footballers getting together and having a beer ain't going to be one of them, John. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. It's not going to make me angry.
Yeah. Grant, you know what? Grant's text is the smartest text I've had. He said, why didn't they ask permission to have a party? And you could have gone to the club and said, listen, we want to get together. Got a bye coming up. We
could have a team meeting.
And we want to have a look at some of the matches together. Well, you can't do it at a home. Go. I know it sounds inconsistent, but if they'd done it in the meeting room at Wynn Stadium, wouldn't have mattered because it would have been. I'm just saying. But why wouldn't you?
John, I want to be there to shake you. Doesn't that tell you how absurd this whole thing is? That they could have done precisely what they've seen, but just sent an email and got an approval, called it a team meeting as opposed to a barbecue, and everything would have been fine.
I know.
And now you're treating them like they've public enemy number one.
Okay, let's take a break.
I'm going to drive back up to New South Wales just to shake you some.
All right. Well, you're going to have to shake the whole NRL and all of the media and the people you work with at news.
The same people who've been hysterical for 18 months. So
you're going to be doing a lot of shaking. You're going to be doing a lot of shaking. All right?
My arms are going to be very sore.
They will be. Look, let's take a short break at 8:30. More people here saying they've agreed with you. I'm throwing stones. Rita's got much more sense. That's from Max. Another person agrees with you. So you're getting a bit of support here. 1318.
The majority will be with you with the pitchforks. Don't worry. I know on this particular issue, I'm in the minority.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to you coming back to Sydney and doing a bit of shaking. In the meantime, let's take a break. We'll come back after this at 29 minutes to 9. 131873 is the number. Lots of text messages here. Everyone's missed the point. They were given a directive because they were put in this bubble. They disobeyed the directive, disobeyed the rules. Gary says, shame Rita doesn't live next to Paul Vaughan. She'd have put up with the noise and probably gone and joined in the party, I'm assuming. Anyway.
Well, but does he want me to get fined as well, does he? I mean, that's what I'm taking out of that. I'd love to be at a barbecue. I would feel absolutely no threat with a bunch of young blokes and who have got very little to fear about this virus. I think we've become absolutely hysterical as a nation.
131873. Denise is on the line. Hello, Denise.
Oh, hi, John. How are you going?
Good,
I had the misfortune to be listening to the ABC this afternoon, and on James Ballantyne's show, they had people just calling in and, lamenting the fact that people were travelling to their area if they were living in the Blue Mountains, for example, to go bushwalking, which is something you're absolutely permitted to do.
Of course you are.
If you want to go to the beach, to go for a jog along the beach, you can do that. Yep. And there were people ringing in left, right and centre and saying, we could tell that they weren't from around here and looking to put them in and so forth.
That's what you go for a walk. That's for your mental health. You go, no one's.
It's just sickening.
I agree with you.
I was just horrified listening to these people going on with their sanctimonious Twitter about, how they could tell that these people weren't from around here, and you see, you see them sitting on the grass as though we're somehow spreading it by sitting on the grass in a park.
That's why we made the point about the mask wearing and the outdoor.
I am punching the air as you speak. I am punching the air.
Sickening.
Because you are so right, and I see it. I wasn't listening to the ABC. I don't know what you were doing over there. You need to have just a moment with yourself over that. But I see it on Twitter every day, all day. These absolute scolds, these miserable Karens who are upset with people being outdoors, who are upset with people exercising, getting some fresh air. Like you said earlier, John, there's not a single case in New South Wales or Victoria transmitted outside. So outside is where you're safer. Outside is where you can get some exercise, you can get some sunlight, get some vitamin D, which is actually good for you and good in terms of COVID-19. And yet you've got people being absolutely awful, sanctimonious dibber-dobbers who want to get people into trouble.
Dibber-dobbers? Can you say it again?
Dibber-dobbers. Dibber-dobbers.
Right. Okay. Denise, you got that off your chest?
Look, it's like everybody at the ABC it doesn't actually value personal freedom anymore. It's so odd. And they're just told these narc fests all the time where people ring in and are actually just, seeming to want the lockdown to get tighter. Yep. And you notice they'll all live in places where people actually might want to visit. Well, just because you live near the beach doesn't mean you own the beach, and nobody in the Blue Mountains owns the Megalong Valley.
Yep. All right. Yeah, that's 100%.
And there was a piece in the Sydney Morning Herald today along those lines, wasn't it? Saying basically Gladys is the cool mum whose lockdown isn't really a lockdown.
Yeah, Sydney siders are like a pack of teens taking advantage of Glad's cool mum parenting, and it finished up at the end of it. Someone's written talking about how, we might be about to take the entire school down with us. But it does sound to me like the way they've handled it has been.
Who wrote that? Who wrote that?
Penny Flanagan.
Name and shame them.
Penny Flanagan, writer and musician. I don't know. I'm just telling you.
I mean, can you imagine being a musician, being hip and free and penning something like that and putting your name to it?
I just
basically reducing people in New South Wales to children, and Gladys is the parent. And like naughty children, we need to be sent to our room and told what to do. Nobody could possibly think for themselves or decide.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I won't agree on the footballers because they had very strict rules that they were given, and they didn't have much. They did not have. They're highly paid.
Who got hurt? Who got hurt?
Who got hurt? The fans, the people who support the club, who've now had to put up with it.
Give me a break.
People
who laying it on thick now.
Yeah, I am.
Who got hurt?
I am.
Well, if it's a crime's been committed, who got hurt?
Well, we don't know because this is the thing. They have a rule. They have a. If you drove for 100 k's down the wrong side of the road and didn't happen to hit someone, you're not going to say, "Oh, well, no one got hurt."
No, that's a very.
You went out drinking at point
0.15.
Oh, I didn't hit anyone. No one got hurt.
That's a very poor analogy.
It's a 100% correct analogy because there's a party at the Metro Suites which has created a new cluster.
Yes, but these were just the players. It wasn't like they had 100 interlopers.
The players were told not to do this, and they did it.
So
I don't understand what you don't get about that.
Is what you're saying. So your analogy was wrong because there was no.
The analogy was 100% correct. Shane, hello. 100%. Let's go to Shane. Shane who's next. There's people on the line. Hello, Shane.
John, I don't think Rita realises how much money the NRL generates in New South Wales and Queensland. Look, we're not talking about 12 park footballers. We're talking about 12 NRL players that had one job to do: stay in the bubble till it's over, get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and play rugby league. The thing is, if it blows up and Palaszczuk decides to say to these blokes, you've got to go in quarantine before you play up here, the comp goes. It's finished. It's done. It's dusted. And not hundreds of people. You're looking at thousands of people in the industry that will be affected.
Can't we separate what the players have done there, and that guy's explained it very, very well, Shane, with the broader question of whether the rules are too restrictive and whether we've overreacted to this? I don't know why we can't do both. Because to me, what the players have done is completely wrong, unarguable.
Well, no, I'm not saying what they did was right. I'm saying the characterisation of what they've done and the fines and the penalties are completely disproportionate.
What about
to
the example to the
offence.
kids who idolise and support these clowns, not to mention the fans who fund it all, like me? That's from
when we
Susan.
talk about, how much they drink and how many women they sleep with and what sort of an example they send, I mean, really, are we going to start going down that road in judging this particular offence? I just think we have completely lost our collective minds as a nation if we're getting fired up about a bunch of blokes having a barbecue and having a get-together, which you admitted would have been perfectly fine if they just did it in the club room.
Well, that's right.
If they didn't do it in someone's house.
How stupid
so
are
that
they?
tells you there is no risk. Well, there was no additional risk to the community.
Right.
There was no additional risk.
I guess there's two options. They either thought there's nothing wrong with this, and when the cops came, what's the problem here? Or they're hiding under beds or in cupboards.
Oh, well, because they don't want to cop a 50 grand fine probably and get suspended.
Well, if they knew that, why did they have the party in the first place?
Because obviously they have zero respect for these rules because they think that
they're above the rules and they're above the rules.
Well, the rules don't,
and they're above the
some
law.
Of these rules don't make sense. Well, they don't make sense. I'm sorry. How can you defend the fact that you've got a rule where you can lose your livelihood for having a barbecue with blokes who you see every day?
It's a rule. It's a rule. It's a rule.
And I'm telling you, it's a stupid rule.
Okay,
I'm not saying they should break it because it's not up to them to break rules
when your son
like,
goes to school,
back to school
and says, "Hey, Mum, there's a really stupid rule here," well, don't ignore it. If you think it's a stupid rule, just ignore it.
Well, we're not living in ordinary times. We've got crazy rules. We've got people being told to wear masks when they're driving their own car. Remember that rule in Brisbane?
No, not here.
Remember that? Well, you've got to defend that as well. But you're going to say
people wearing masks. I talked about it earlier, how stupid it is to be wearing masks outside and not when you're indoors.
But it's a rule. But it's a rule in
Sydney.
WA. It was a rule in Victoria. It was a rule in Queensland.
And we've talked about how silly it is.
But you're saying if you don't follow that blindly, then you should deserve severe consequences. I'm saying we are living in just unprecedented times with these rules that are being imposed. And could you have imagined in your lifetime that you would be prevented from getting together with a friend or a loved one and seeing them? That the government could tell you that you can't do that?
Well, what about if? All right, okay. So what about if I wanted to have Ray Hadley and Ben Fordham and Michael McLaren and all their staff, who we spend time in here, round to my house for a party?
Do you lot sweat together? Do you lot typically?
No, we actually spend. We're within this building. So if I said we're going to have a party together, and think, well, Rita says the rule's stupid, so let's have the party anyway. How do you think that'd go down?
Well, if you like to use your example, if you call the party a team meeting and put it in the conference room, you probably could do it within the law.
Well, we had a great week. We could have a gathering in the conference room. I'm talking about in my house.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's perfectly fine if you have it in this particular venue, if it's exactly the same thing.
I'm just talking about how stupid that just illustrates how dumb they are.
But this just...
We're talking around in circles. You're defending the indefensible. I'm shocked.
Hello? I mean, Captain Obvious. I mean, who's ever claimed that NRL players are the brightest sparks in the room?
Not.
Come on.
These ones aren't.
Well, obviously.
All right. Okay.
We'll agree on something.
We'll take a break. It is now 16 minutes to 9. All right, a lot of... look, you're getting some support on the text line, heaps of text coming in, but a lot of people think you're falling down a rabbit hole. So let's go to calls here if we can, Rita.
Falling down a rabbit hole, that is your characterisation.
It's been written by a texter, says, Rita, you're falling down a rabbit hole. Another one says you don't have a leg to stand on, give up. I'm just telling you, anyway, what they're saying.
Both of them are fools.
Okay, Megan, hello, what did you want to say?
Good evening. morning. I just wanted to point out that for the first time in the history of mankind, the last 40 probably years, we've actually had the information and the skills to know what to do when we're in these pandemics. My question to Rita is, why on earth, when she's in such a privileged position to actually be able to use that information in order to protect the rest of the community, why she would not rather be safe than sorry?
Can I answer that? Because the way you frame that question is so patronising, but I'll answer it in good faith. One, I think my job is to bring facts and rationality and to try to counter some of the absolute scaremongering and hysteria. And you say for the first time we've got the information to deal with a pandemic. Well, in fact, no. Don't please read a little bit more widely. There's never been a consensus, a scientific consensus, that lockdowns are a good way to deal with a pandemic, not even the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, there are world-renowned experts. I'm talking about the Harvard Medical School professor Martin Kulldorff, Stanford Medical School professor Jay Bhattacharya, Oxford professor Sunetra Gupta. I mentioned them because I quoted them for a piece I've written tomorrow, who have said lockdowns ultimately do far more harm than good, and they are absolutely the worst way to deal with a pandemic. We've even had the World Health Organization last year say they should be an absolute last response if your
They've said the only
hospital
place where
system
they've
is
reduced
exhausted.
the incidence of death is Australia, New Zealand, and I think Malta. They named 3 places where
which are all islands where
UK's
the
an
borders
island.
were closed.
Isn't
and
the UK
but its borders
isn't
weren't
England
closed.
an island?
Its borders were never closed. Its borders weren't closed, John. I mean, that's the key point. People were coming and going. Australia closed its borders more than 12 months ago, and that's the key difference. That's the main difference between us and the rest of the world. Now, there's also all sorts of. It's not just an economic cost of lockdowns. There's the health cost of lockdowns, the mental anguish of lockdowns. There's a fantastic piece in the Telegraph tomorrow from a professor, an oncologist, Professor Carol Sikoro, who's a cancer specialist, who's written about that lockdowns cost lives. There's people not getting their cancer screenings. They're not having
We've
that
talked
early
about it for the last
intervention.
12 months. We've talked about that
course.
here.
So
but how's it got to do with footballers ignoring a rule that's been laid down to them and which they've agreed to abide by as a condition of being able to continue to do what they do?
Jesus. Because the response has been uniformly disproportionate in this country, and a lot of the things we've done, rather than actually be for the greater good, are causing enormous harm. Look at the mental health damage.
You guys in New South... We're talking about these footballers ignoring
we're not talking about those footballers. The woman who just called up wasn't talking about those footballers. She was talking about why I would dare use my powerful platform not to be preaching for everybody to be more safe than sorry. She'd be one of those ones who'd probably be calling the ABC saying, oh my gosh, there's 6 people walking on the beach together. Well, I'm sorry, that's the impression
because in the end, we've talked about this and we allow all opinions, but I don't know how you can sort of say, because the overall response to the pandemic, in your view, has been over the top. Footballers who are given very strict instructions, which aren't hard to abide by, they've ignored them.
John, you're the one who's conflating those two things. I'm just saying that even by your own description, this very get-together could have happened in the club rooms, the exact same interactions, and it would have been perfectly within the rules.
Which is how stupid they are. Because they're not supposed to be at someone's home.
How stupid the rules are as well? Yes, the players are stupid. No one's arguing against that. But you don't see how the rules are also somewhat questionable if that's the consequence?
Not
that
in relation to this. No, I don't think so. No.
And it would have been fine.
No, because they've been told to be in a bubble so they can continue to play football.
They were in a bubble. There was nobody else there. Are you telling me there were others there who were not within the bubble?
At the moment, we've established, I think that there weren't. If there were, they're going to be in even more trouble.
Yeah, that's a completely different argument.
Let's take a break. It's about it for tonight with Rita Panahi. We might have to try and finish this off later in the week if we can. And I've got someone here, Paul, that says,
"Mum, after the show,
Mum, Dad, stop, please, it hurts." And you've managed to get me bagging my own football team for an hour, which is not what I wanted to do. So anyway. There you go.
Wow. You've become a Karen. That's what's happened, John.
People are going to be reading more about this
Karen.
in News Corp tomorrow.
For 2 weeks.
You've written about this tomorrow, okay, and we'll talk to you later in the week. Thank you.
I'll speak to you soon.